something extraordinary is happening in the world. America's allies are uniting not against Russia, not against China, but against the United States. Let that sink in. For decades, Moscow and Beijing tried to weaken America's alliances. They applied pressure, they spread doubt, they played the long game. In 2026, they no longer have to. I have spent years studying how global power erodes. Usually, it happens slowly, quietly. This time, it is fast, and it is self-inflicted. European leaders now issue joint warnings to Washington. At the United Nations, US allies speak of broken rules and violated norms. Intelligence agencies, once bound tightly to America, now whisper a new word: risk. Meanwhile, the American president repeats a familiar claim. America is respected again, strong again, feared again, but respect is not declared. It is granted. And today, the world is pulling away. If you want to understand how a superpower can lose trust before it loses power, stay with me. And if this perspective matters, subscribe, because clarity is rare in moments like this. Because before we talk about consequences, we must first define the problem. So let's begin by asking a simple question. What exactly went wrong? This story is not about a single speech or a single decision. It is about a pattern. The central issue is not that America made a mistake. Great powers recover from mistakes all the time. The issue is that America has become unpredictable to those who depend on it most. Alliances are built on expectations, on shared rules, on the belief that tomorrow will look broadly like today. That belief is now cracking. When allies hear threats over Greenland, they hear disregard for sovereignty. When they watch military action in Venezuela, they see norms being crossed. When intelligence sharing is reduced and joint missions are scaled back, trust quietly drains away. None of this happens in isolation. Each move reinforces the last. Each reaction accelerates the next. Meanwhile, American leadership insists the country is more respected than ever, but respect does not survive contradiction. It collapses under it. What we are witnessing is not a collapse of power. It is a collapse of confidence. And when confidence fades, alliances adapt. They don't wait. To understand how we arrived here, we need to look backward at the system America built and how it began to unravel. To understand this moment, we have to return to the beginning. Not to a person, but to a system. After World War II, the United States built something unprecedented. An order based on rules, on institutions, on restraint backed by power. Allies did not follow America because it was perfect. They followed because it was predictable, because its interests were channeled through norms, treaties, and shared values. The system rewarded patience. It punished impulsiveness. And it turned American power into global stability. But systems are fragile when belief fades. Over time, frustration grew inside the United States. Alliances were called burdens. Rules were framed as constraints. Multilateralism became a dirty word. Under Donald Trump, this skepticism hardened into doctrine. Foreign policy became personal, transactional, driven by instinct rather than institution. When decisions depend on mood and moment, allies cannot plan. When commitments feel reversible, trust evaporates. History shows us this pattern clearly. Empires rarely fall from external attack. They erode when the logic that holds them together is abandoned. And when that erosion becomes visible, it only takes one spark, one moment that turns anxiety into alarm. That spark came earlier this year, when Donald Trump threatened Greenland, a territory long considered autonomous, but still tied to Denmark. The message was simple. Greenland should be for sale. America could buy it. It was not just a diplomatic gaffe. It was a window into something larger. It was a reminder that the United States was no longer bound by its own principles. Allies reacted swiftly. Denmark rejected the notion outright. The European Union voiced its discomfort, and NATO allies, once united under America's banner, questioned whether this was the America they signed up for. Then came the military offensive in Venezuela, a U.S. operation that sent shockwaves through the international community. Even the United Nations issued a rare rebuke. Trump's actions were seen as violating international law, risking destabilization and undermining the post-war order. This was not just foreign policy gone wrong. It was an unraveling, a departure from the very values that had once defined America's leadership. And the consequences of this are still unfolding, but they won't stay confined to Venezuela or Greenland. The consequences are already spreading in ways that are subtle but deep, and the first victims are often the most vulnerable. Take the Netherlands, for example, a nation once eager to join US-led missions in the Caribbean focused on countering drug trafficking. Now, they are pulling back. Why? Because of Trump's military operations against civilian boats. Because of the increasing sense that American actions, once considered safeguards, now endanger innocent lives. Great Britain followed suit, halting intelligence sharing with the US. They, too, saw that American decisions no longer aligned with their values or interests. These are not small moves. They represent a rejection not just of policy, but of the broader American-led order. And they are echoed by other nations. This is what happens when a country loses its moral authority. When decisions are based on power, not principle, and the people who suffer the most, the citizens of those countries, the innocent civilians caught in the crossfire of misjudgments. But the impacts are not confined to individual nations. They ripple outward across the world stage. The global impact of these shifts is undeniable. It is not just about what happens in one country. It's about how one superpower's actions set off a chain reaction across the world. In the wake of America's increasing isolation, countries are turning to each other. They are forging new alliances, expanding partnerships, and deepening ties that once seemed impossible. The European Union, for example, is exploring new trade deals. Joint sanctions are being discussed. Military collaborations are on the rise without American involvement. These nations are realizing that they must act independently. They must protect their own interests. And they can no longer rely on Washington's leadership. It's a historic shift, one that changes the nature of global politics. And this shift isn't just about economics or military might. It's about values, shared values that once connected the West to the United States. But those values are now fractured. The question is no longer, will America lead? It's who will lead in America's place? As the future unfolds, we must consider three possible scenarios. Some are optimistic, others less so. Let's look at three possible futures, each one shaped by the choices made in the coming years. Scenario 1, the optimistic path. In this scenario, the world finds a way to rebuild partnerships despite the fractures. Nations recognize the need for cooperation. They establish new institutions, ones that are more inclusive, more diverse. America, though weakened, still plays a role, albeit one of a partner, not a leader. The world moves forward, driven by shared interests, even as the US recovers its place in a new global order. Scenario 2, the middle ground. Here, America's power remains dominant, but the system has changed. Countries still cooperate, but they are more cautious. New alliances form, but they are built on the necessity of survival, not idealism. The world is divided, a shifting patchwork of competing blocs, each pulling in its direction. The US is no longer the unchallenged leader. Instead, it becomes one of several major powers vying for influence. Scenario 3, the dark future. In this worst-case scenario, America's actions lead to total disintegration of the post-World War II order. Countries no longer trust one another. Trade, military cooperation, and diplomacy unravel. the world returns to a more chaotic, fragmented state. Nations act in their own self-interest, and global institutions collapse under the weight of distrust. America, once a beacon of stability, becomes a rogue nation, isolated and adrift. The future is uncertain, but it is clear that the choices made today will decide which path we take. The key question is whether the world and America will find a way to navigate this crisis. As we look ahead, we must ask ourselves one final question. What kind of world do we want to build? The future depends on the choices we make today, but it also depends on how we view our place in the world. America was once a symbol of leadership, strength, and integrity. But leadership is not about power alone. It is about trust. It is about commitment to values that transcend borders and self-interest. If America is to regain its standing, it must first rebuild that trust. It must return to the principles that once defined its role on the global stage: cooperation, responsibility, and respect for the rules that protect us all. The road ahead will not be easy. The damage done is significant, but it is not irreversible. The first step is acknowledging the truth that we are at a crossroads, the truth that the world is watching, and that our future depends on how we respond. As the world evolves, we must ask ourselves, what role do we want to play? A role of division and isolation, or a role of reconciliation and leadership? The choice is ours. But it is not just a choice for America. It is a choice for the world. We are at a pivotal moment in history. The path we choose will determine the future of global stability. It will determine the role of America on the world stage and whether it can regain its place as a respected leader. The choices we face are not just political. They are moral. They are about the kind of world we want to live in, a world of cooperation and trust, or one of division and fear. In the coming years, we will see which way this world will turn. Will America learn from its mistakes? Will it find a way back to the values that once made it the leader of the free world? Or will we continue down the path of isolation and arrogance, pushing away those who once stood with us? The future is not set in stone, but the time to act is now. The world is changing, and so must we. It's time to choose the world we want, to create a world built on shared values, trust, and respect, or a world of fear, distrust, and division. We have the power to shape our future, but the question remains, will we? The next chapter of this story is still unwritten. It is up to us how it unfolds.